This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.
This episode of the Fandalorian podcast is brought to you by the Adla Real Estate team. If you live in New York, anywhere between Manhattan and Montauk, and are looking to buy or sell, you need to call the Adla Real Estate team. This real estate company is run by a husband and wife duo that, in addition to being real estate agents, are also a public school teacher and a police officer. It is a family-run business that gives you the attention and care you need when you're about to make one of the most important decisions of your life. And I know from experience. Also, if you mention that you are a fan of the Fandalorians, they will be able to get you up to $2,000 back at closing. It doesn't matter if you are buying or listing. So, if you are buying or selling anywhere from Manhattan to Montauk, call the Adla Real Estate team at 631-384-6372. Or check out the website at adlarealestateteam.com. Mention the Fandalorians and save today. Welcome back, class. On today's episode, we are joined by teacher Mr. V and do our long-awaited post-observation review of Masters of the Universe Revolution. All this and more in a Thanks, He-Man. Wait, has anyone seen Prince Adam? Episode of the Fandalorians. Teachers by day, nerds by night. That is the bell. Class is in session. Welcome to the Fandalorians podcast. Teachers by day, nerds by night. Proud part of the Unfiltered Studios podcasting network. This is the #1 public school teacher pop culture fandom podcast in the country. Here to give you the latest news in the worlds of entertainment and lively discussion on all matters of pop culture and fandom. I should read this thing ahead of time, Mr. G. I really
wow, you powered through that. Like,
did.
It almost sounded like a rap, like one of those.
It was tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I picked up, slow down with the pace. You got to listen to it.
It's like Bone
You
Thugs
sent
and
the
Harmony
pop-up,
over there.
The music, nice. Shout out to Bone Thugs. Yeah, well, shout out to Easy.
I don't know how they talk that fast. Like, those guys talk fast. And then there's guys that rap even faster than that. I don't know how they do it.
Some of this trash now, but I don't think anyone has the bars like the Micro Machine dude had from the commercials. Remember that guy?
Oh, I remember him.
He was a record holder, that guy.
He was next level. We got to shout out him one day. You know what? I got to get him on the show. Since we get new listeners all the time, allow me to introduce yourself. My name is Mr. Richardson, 4th grade teacher, and the man who is excited to do a crossover on another podcast. Mr. G, we did a crossover on another podcast.
Oh, I thought you stepped out on us for a second. I'm like,
no,
what? But I remember I was there.
You were there. We did Nailed It with St. Joe. If you haven't heard the podcast, check it out. We did 80s cartoons. 2 80s cartoons we like. One we hated. A lot of fun. A lot of jokes. I listened to it recently. It's a great podcast. It's part of this network. Mr. G, I had a good time.
I had a good time as well. It was a lot of fun. I love 80s cartoons, which is like perfect for today's episode.
I got to say this, though, before I continue. Eddie, the man of 1,000 shows, reached out.
Oh, yeah?
He gave me a quick list of some of the things he really loved. He loved Laugh Olympics. That was one of his #1s, and
it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
I loved it. You have if you didn't watch the show, it was Yogi had like an Olympic setting. Yogi had a team, Yogi Bear and his group of friends, and then Scooby Doo and the crew, and then
and Dudley
and everything. Dudley was it, yeah, and then the villains with Dashley. That was one of his #1 shows.
That's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, so he watched everything too. So it was a fun time. Listen to that podcast if you need to. You have to do it.
Exactly.
Do it.
You have to, not need. You have to.
Right. We're cross promoting. That's what's happening right now. Co-teaching with me, the man who finished listening to Kristen Hanna's The Women, Mr. G. You finished it? Finally?
I finished it. And it was interesting. It wasn't actually my favorite one of her books. I don't feel like the story was super strong as compared to her other stories, but it was definitely a story that needed to be written. One of the things that I really enjoy about listening to audiobooks is that a lot of times at the end, the author has an author's note and she reads it, or she'll share some extra information. And she talked about how much research she went into getting all these stories and getting the information right and the feel of the book, and how many people she had read the book. It's set in Vietnam. The main character volunteered to go to Vietnam, and she was a combat medic nurse. And, it's a good story. The ending was a little light, but I appreciate that the story was told, because I'm sure it's encompasses a lot of the negative experiences that these women had coming back to the United States after Vietnam.
We have a guest coming up in a few weeks. We have a lot of coming out. Yeah, we have a couple of guest books. We have a lot of things happening. I'm going to read one of these books so we're on the same page. I'm going to have to. I really have to. I'd be caught up with it. And substituting for Mr. McDonald, who's off making the world safe somewhere, teacher Mr. B. Hey, man, how's it going?
Hey, it's good to be here.
Great.
Yes, it's great to be here. As Mr. B works with me in my building, and as he will tell you, I have promised him on the podcast numerous times and said, hey, you should come on and do this, and then forget. And then, hey, come on and do this, and then forget. This is what are the things I said you could come on to do that we inevitably didn't do because it slipped my mind?
There are a bunch.
There's a bunch.
In fact, there's quite a few of which I don't know if I even remember anymore. Bad Batch is one of them.
Yes, Bad Batch season 2. You were going to come on, but then
and now we're on to season 3.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Bad Batch. Let me tell you about the Bad Batch season 2, though. We kind of pushed that off a bunch of times to reschedule that conversation.
That was thank you, Charlie, for defending me. What else did I said something else.
Was the new Indiana Jones movie, or it's not new anymore? I think that was one. There's another.
You guys can still do that. I haven't even watched that yet.
Yeah. See. Here's the thing.
That's a late assignment.
As I have stated earlier in this podcast, I forget everything. This was off camera. If I don't write stuff down, I don't remember. And I'll tell you, and then I'm like, oh, and then we don't do it, and I just don't remember. So I apologize. And it was so funny because I saw him in the parking lot. I was like, oh, we're going to do He-Man. And he was talking to me about it. I said, hey, you want to come on? He's like, Jimmy, you promised me I'd be on 4 times now. I'm like, oh, snap, I have. So we made it happen.
I'm glad it happened.
We literally almost canceled today, but we made it happen.
Yes.
No, we're here. We're here. It's a good thing.
It's good. We worked it out. It's time to do some I have the power type stuff. Thank you for joining us. How can you support the show? First, ask your child's teacher if they need anything. Kindergarten to high school, they need something. Reach out. You got a little extra money. You want to throw it their way. I'm sure it'll help them with things they need around the classroom. And tissues. Also, check out the merch. Head to the TeePublic link. The link is in the bio of the show. Cut and paste it and pick up some merch. All good stuff. All the proceeds go to the Laney's Legacy of Hope, which is a nonprofit organization that sends money directly to kids who are suffering from pediatric cancer. Finally, if you live on Long Island, you want to check out Red Shirt Comics in downtown Port Jeff Village for your comic book needs. He was on the show a few weeks ago. For our listeners in the area, you want to head there. They have comic stuff. They have all sorts of things you want to like. Bring the kids. Introduce them to comics. Head down to Red Shirt Comics. I love it. We also love the Star Trek reference. You got to check the shop out. And that's it. Let's get on with the show. We're not doing a morning announcement. There is no announcement. We're going to spend time doing the post-observation review of Masters of the Universe. What is it?
It's Revolution.
I keep tripping it up between the other ones.
Revolution was the first one. Revolution is the second.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it both ways. All right, let's get on the show. It's time to not play the morning announcement jingle. It's time to play our post-observation jingle for Masters of the Universe Revolution. Reverence. I got
Revolution.
Whatever. Oh, you know what we're going to do? I changed my mind. Let's play the late assignment jingle. Not because it's the late assignment, because Mr. Hewitt made this wonderful song for us that we've only played a few times because we seem to be getting our work done on time. I feel bad. Every week he listens, and I can just see him somewhere with a single tear coming out of one of his eyes, knowing that we didn't play it again and again. So, Mr. Hewitt, I know you listen because he sends me messages all the time. Mr. Hewitt, this one's for you.
Oh, it's so late! Fandalorian life has got me so busy. Podcasting all the time is making me dizzy. Teaching by day, nerding by night. How am I supposed to get this thing right? I'm down on bended knee. I know I had 3 weeks. Please accept it, please, with my sincerity.
Bro, is there extra credit?
Eternia needs a king.
Why would the power reveal itself to me if I was destined to give it up?
I know where my talents lie. On the throne of Eternos. Time for a revolution.
He's not Skeletor anymore. He's more powerful than ever. I'm here to ask for help.
He who masters technology masters the universe. We know how powerful a little magic can be. I have
All right, this series is a follow-up to the 2021 series that was created by writer-director Kevin Smith, Masters of the Universe Revelation, which served as a sequel to the He-Man Masters of the Universe series that ran from 1983 to 1985. For those who grew up in the 80s, He-Man animated series was one of the biggest things at that time. Matter of fact, on that other podcast, is one of the ones I claim was one of my favorite shows of all. Kevin Smith serves as an executive producer and showrunner for the Netflix original series, with Mattel and Powerhouse Animation Studios producing. The first installment, Revelation, met with positive reaction from old and new fans alike, but it did have some mixed reviews because there was not as much focus on He-Man, and he wasn't, many felt, to be the main protagonist in the series. But now, Masters of the Universe Revolution, which is what we're reviewing today, has changed all that. It has a stellar cast that features some of the most iconic actors in film and television, features anime inspired through Powerhouse signature art style, who love their work in Western animation, fantasy, and superhero shows. It's a good stuff. It is basically what it's about. Following He-Man's return, Teela is now the sorceress of Castle Grayskull, and Skeletor seeks revenge after being corrupted with the technological virus created by his master, Hordak. Skeletor resumes his revenge on Eternia. Teela is working with Evelyn to bring back Pre-Eternia, which is basically heaven. When the warriors die, they go to heaven. But in the previous season, Evelyn basically destroyed heaven. So Teela's working on that. He-Man's working on some stuff. A lot happened, a lot of animation. And let's go. Post-observation questions. As a teacher, you get asked these questions all the time. In general, how successful was this lesson?
How successful was this lesson? In general, I thought it was successful. It was a quick 5 episodes. They were 24, 25 minutes, 26 minutes long each episode. And they wrapped up the storyline with action, some character building. So overall, I really enjoyed this season. John, what did you think?
I agree. It was nice and short. I mean, it was great to be able to just, kick back for, 20, 25 minutes at the battles. I love the battles. I've loved the battles since I was 5 years old, and it had a lot of those. And so for me, if nothing else, if you get nothing else out of watching this show, you just watch it for the battles. That was my main thing, and that was what I particularly enjoyed about it.
I liked Revelation a lot, but I loved Revolution, the one we just watched. I loved it because Revelation barely, as they said, had He-Man in it. We talked about this when we did the podcast way back when, but basically the idea, or at least what I thought happened, was Netflix was now in this zone of, instead of people dropping Netflix, let's split our series into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2, so people stick around for it, because they were trying to do ways to keep people from dropping, signing up for a month and binging a show and then turning it off. The problem is they split this, which it doesn't appear that Kevin Smith had planned that. So if you just watch the first part of the previous season, there's He-Man, spoilers, dies in the first one, and he's not in it for the rest of the first part. So that left people being mad and upset. Come on, it's not a He-Man show. Now, if you put that all together at once, it would have been a different story. They broke it up. This season, though, He-Man was definitely the main protagonist. The story was about him. It was tied to him emotionally. There was weight to it. So I felt this was a great follow-up to the previous series. To what extent was your instructional delivery effective in this lesson? What did you like most about this show? I'll just keep rattling on some stuff. Listen, they said Revelation was supposed to be like a continuation of the series. What Revelation was, and Mr. G liked it, which surprised me, because it was just a what if. It was what if Skeletor won, and what if everyone knew Prince Adam was He-Man? That's basically what they did in the previous season of this. Because season 1 and 2, but they renamed it. It was a what if episode. It's one of these story arcs that I like a lot, but this is why I feel this new season's better. The first season was what I call like a deconstruction. They ripped the world apart and they rebuilt something new at the end. Everyone knows who He-Man is. Teela's now the sorceress. They kind of took the toys, broke them, and fixed it. So this season was just a continuation of the new norm, the new universe. So there was no breakdown. It was just adventure in the new world they created. So it's like a deconstruction versus reconstruction story. This is a reconstruction with a new birth. It's like Transformers the movie. It destroyed the previous and built a new universe, which was trash when we watched the series after it, as Mr. G said on another podcast.
Hold on, what did I say?
You talked about how you didn't like the last season of Transformers.
Oh, yeah. Transformers.
The fact that in the movie, they destroyed the universe, and then they rebuilt a new construction universe. And then when playing it, we're like, I don't like the new ones, I like the old ones.
Yeah, I didn't like the new, it was season 3 is when it started. Yeah. Season 3 started up after Transformers the movie, and I wasn't a big fan of it.
Yeah, so season 1 of Master Universe was a what if, and they redid the universe. Season 2 is a continuation of the new universe, and that's what I loved the most. Story was off and running. It was tight. It was emotionally connected to He-Man. There's a lot there. Mr. B, what did you like most about it?
I don't know if I have any one particular. I like the voice acting. I think that was probably my favorite. You've got Will Shatner. You've got Mark Hamill. You've got no Sarah Michelle Gellar this time around. She was in season 1.
Melissa Boyett.
I forget her name. But I mean, Will Shatner. How old is Will Shatner? He's what, 90? What's he? Is Will Shatner in his 90s now?
Let me see.
I'll look this up.
He's up there. And I mean, his delivery and everything that he has going for it was perfect. I mean, it was spot on. It was awesome.
I got to do some math here. He was born in 1931. So he's an old man.
I loved him.
Yeah, 93. I had to double check.
Yeah, I thought it was about 93, 94, and I was totally impressed. I was like, I mean, I've always loved Will Shatner, but it's as Keldor, I was like, wow.
Yes. All right. One thing I liked about He-Man Revelation was the animation style, and I really enjoy the animation style once again of He-Man Revolution. I enjoyed the way they made the characters look. I enjoyed how the music is tied in, the sound is tied in. Everything about the production of this animated series was excellent. Between the voices, Skeletor, all that stuff was great. One of the things that I thought was silly, and then I randomly had a conversation with Josh down at the comic book store, Mr. Darby. I was talking to him. I bumped down in the shop and we were chatting about He-Man. And I said, at first, it was weird how when I was a kid, I didn't like when they changed the way the toys looked or on the show, because that wasn't my toy. And I wasn't getting all these different toys. So it's I had He-Man, I didn't get the updated Battle Armor He-Man, or I did randomly get the Battle Armor Skeletor. But it annoyed me at first. But then he made a very interesting statement, and I was like, wow, you are so right. Josh was saying, he's like, He-Man, the original cartoon, was meant to sell toys. That was the vehicle for selling their toys. So we were just watching commercials for these toys. And if you think about it, they introduced all these new little toys to the episode. This season introduced the elephant guy, Hose Nose, right?
Yeah.
They introduced the Buzzman played a little bit more of a role in this season. They Battle Armor He-Man was there. Then they had what I thought was silly was what King Randor's Hulkbuster outfit.
Yeah, that was totally Hulkbuster outfit. Yeah.
But Josh was like, but it's just a toy. It's just a new toy in a toy line that doesn't really exist. And I was like, you know what? I can appreciate that, because it's kind of like an homage to being like, we're just trying to get kids to buy toys. So I was like, all right, I kind of liked how they added those little things in there like that. But
is Kevin Smith planning on coming out with a toy line for the show? Do we know?
They do have toys, but these are right. They're the collectible toys. So, it's a $25 action figure box. They're not toys that you're going to play with, but they're toys that you collect, hang on the wall, put on a shelf kind of thing.
They're going to stay in the packaging, and that's pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But they are nice looking action figures.
I like the part that these toys were doing action scenes. I know it's weird to say, but as someone who loved He-Man, Buzz Off wasn't flying around punching people in the face. It didn't happen. So to see the toys move in certain ways, like, oh, because when I played with him, that's what he did. But on the cartoon, it was very light. They kind of buzz and land, or he'd catch someone and they go to their, you know what I mean? I think one of my favorite things about this, and it's weird, and it's really weird. My first toy I got was, of course, He-Man. My second toy I got, and I got most of these on like a Christmas morning, is when I began the journey. It came out in September. I think I was able to pull my mom to pull off a He-Man and the Skeletor before Christmas. And then Christmas is when we opened up, like, okay, it got real. I got Battle Cat, I had the whole thing. I had Ram Man. And I remember watching the cartoon with Ram Man.
Ram Man too.
Yeah, I remember watching the cartoon with Ram Man as a kid, thinking he would like run it. He was stupid. Like, he was not that smart. He wasn't that bright. Second, he would bump into someone and they'd usually move out of the way. He'd fall into a rock and like grab his head, like, oh, nothing. He wasn't that powerful. They leveled him up in this episode. Like, he was shooting from like a distance, like half a block away, coming at him like a rocket, knocking over tanks. I'm like, yo, this is what Ram Man's supposed to be like. I know it's like a little thing, but to me, just to see that character actually like cut loose and be like, oh, that's why he's on the team. Because in the original cartoon, they didn't do it. So the way they came up with it, I know I listen to Kevin Smith's podcast sometimes, and he said when he wrote the script, and as someone who likes to write a script, I enjoyed it. He'd write the dialogue, and then they told him just write fighty fighty, and they will choreograph the entire fight for you. You don't have to write it. Mm-hmm. So he just say who's in the scene, and then fighty fighty, and they put like 8 minutes or 2 whatever. And so they came up with the Ram Man doing this, all these different moments, the battles. And that group, again, I know they do Castlevania too, which is an incredible cartoon. That group does a really great job. Yeah.
Really? I don't actually like the animation style in Castlevania. It's too flat for me.
No, you know what? I'm talking about the action scenes, not necessarily the animation.
Oh,
like the moves and the battle looks like it's choreographed kind of
the
thing.
The choreography, yeah.
Yeah, that's almost similar how the choreography on Avatar is like based on something. That's what I think. Not as much as the animation. What would you do differently? Had to teach this lesson again to the same group of students. Like, if you could switch up something, anything you guys want to change. Believe it or not, I actually don't have anything for this because I know they got less episodes than normal. And again, shamelessly listened to Kevin Smith's podcast, it had to be a really tight script because they only had this many episodes. So I think it flowed perfectly. I didn't feel like there was a droppage. So I don't know what I would tweak. If anything, I don't know. What about you, Mr. Bay? Anything?
This is really, really minor. But if you know anything about Filmation's animation style, about, who they are, they were an animation company that I don't want to call low budget, but they had a budget line to work on. So anywhere that they could shave off certain animation sequences and whatnot. So they would reuse certain things. Like, for example, when Adam changes into He-Man, that was always stock footage of what they had. They didn't do that. It wasn't like, they set out to make a cheesy cartoon. Mm-hmm. They were just trying to, keep their budgets in line with the money that they had. And I think that's kind of what added to the charm of the original cartoon. And you don't necessarily have that anymore. It's kind of the same deal with the original Star Wars, where George Lucas had, a certain budget. He was inventing technology kind of as he went along. And you kind of make do with the resources that you have available to you. And I feel Filmation was kind of working off that same attitude. Now you have Kevin Smith coming along, where budget isn't necessarily a huge issue. He can kind of do what he needs to do with regards to animation and writing. So they don't necessarily do that anymore. And I kind of miss that.
The classic look. I get that.
Like I said, it's very, very minor.
That is a thing, because that is a fine line for nostalgia, like the way it looks. And I happened to say this yesterday in class. we were doing biographies, and we were doing Black History Month biographies this whole month. And we did Lonnie Johnson, who invented Super Soaker. So we were actually watching commercials from the 90s about what a Super Soaker was. And they're so grainy, so just because of the TV technology. And nowadays, you see every pore on people's faces, and the makeup to me looks terrible because we have just high def stuff.
Yeah.
So, the idea that it's not as the technology is different. I don't know if you can catch that, but going with this idea of what it used to look like, my son has a Nintendo Switch and he has Super Mario 3, and you actually have a button that lets you put it on so it actually looks like it's on a tube TV with the lines in it. It's not smooth animation to kind of give you that feel of what it was like to actually play one of these games on a TV like that, not the nice
high def.
Yeah, I hear you. What would I do differently? And this is the only gripe I had with the story, how naive He-Man was with Keldor. It's like, oh, my uncle that I've never heard of came back, wants to be king. Oh, you don't have a sword? No problem. I'll just take my axe. I'll go do whatever. I just was like, oh, He-Man, I know you're young and you're a teenager and you're pushed into this thing, but that was very naive. And I just didn't like that necessarily. Naivety? No, I can't say that word, but
no, I think that's
right. A word.
I'm going to add on to this because I had that down for things that didn't make sense. So I'll just say my piece on it now since you already opened the door to it. I'll jump ahead. Yeah. The fact that he just decided that his uncle, who he's known for maybe 2 days, and saw him in one battle, and when He-Man got like knocked away in the battle, he comes back, everyone's cheering. He goes, you know what? That guy should be king. I didn't like that. I would have liked that if this was He-Man like 6 months into this thing. He's been He-Man for so long, been in adult situations. Like, he's not like a Shazam situation. He's been in adult situations as He-Man numerous times, so you should know better. I should let this guy be king after king. Literally, he's been gone all this time. He just pops up randomly. No one wants to fact check him. No one's checking his ID. Everyone's, oh, it's my uncle. All right, great. Well, you know what? You should be king. Whoa, calm down. Like, I don't understand why. I mean, I'm going to get more about the kingship and the whole thing later on. But yeah, that was one of my nitpicks as well. I had issue with that. Welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. If you ever venture to the Teacher's Lounge, there are some conversations just like this. Mr. B and I are in the same Teacher's Lounge sometimes, and he hears people ask all the time, hey, by the way, what was their senior quote? They ask every day. Like, we were just there. Ms. Weber brought it up just this morning, so we saw it. All right, best line in the series. I mean, I can't go into full detail, but the Evil Lynn Loincloth line is classic. I'm just going to...
I laughed out loud. I rewinded it to be like, did she say what I thought she said? I literally rewound it just to listen to what she said to make sure I was clear of what she said.
Yeah, I mean, she's voiced by Cersei from Game of Thrones. I knew her voice so much. I'm like, who is this woman? And I looked it up, and it's, of course, Cersei. And that was an incredible line. Mr. B, what about you? Got a line here?
Mine is, I think it's the first episode of the season. It's the whole Scareglow battle scene. And is this bully bothering you, son? Dad?
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
I was going to say, Orko had a couple of one-liners in there. He was the comic
relief. Orko always
relief.
has one-liners.
Yeah.
It was funny because in the original show, again, I watched 1,000 of them. He had like the corny, goofy lines. In this one, he's like legit funny. He says things, so it's just they've all leveled up. His magic is incredible. In the original show, everything went wrong. Every spell backfired. Here, he was pulling out some crazy Doctor Strange type stuff. So yeah, those are some good lines. Google slide was on point. Most rewatchable moment or moments in the series. Mr. B, you got any?
Again, I'm going to mention that whole Scareglow scene when it's the action sequence. I love it. I really do. I could watch the first episode over and over and over again. It's my favorite.
I also did love the first episode too. A couple of things I want to say. One, I already mentioned the Ram Man thing before. I won't say it twice. I liked when he's going to go off as He-Man and jumps off the building on Cringer as Prince Adam and says, "By the power of Grayskull," and he hits the ground as He-Man and rides off. I thought that was awesome. I just had a different way of changing other than him standing still and pulling the sword and looking up. That I did like that. Gilder and Man-at-Arms, when Man-at-Arms first runs into Gilder and literally says, "We travel the universe together." I'm like, that's a reference to the movie because that's when they went to Earth and they're referencing it in this. That means, Courtney Cox exists in this universe as that kid. That made me really happy. That little reference. First of all, bringing in Gilder was brilliant. And they referenced the thing he made. I'm like, oh, that's just a deep cut. Like, you have to know. Even that costume he changed to at the end's a deep cut. Even though I didn't watch that version of He-Man, I did recognize the uniform. And last, I love the Skeletor Hordak battle as my favorite battle in this. When Skeletor finally comes to a realization what happened to him, that this guy turned him into this, tortured him, goes after him. And in my mind, I figured, well, Skeletor is going to get knocked down because this is Hordak. And then Skeletor pulls out the magic card and literally beats him. And I find myself cheering for Skeletor to get revenge on the guy who did this to him. And then an episode later, I need Skeletor to die because he's now turned on everyone else. It was just that we're cheering. It's almost a Breaking Bad. We're cheering for the villain, and also the villain becomes the hero for a second, and then the villain another
back
episode.
to the villain.
Yeah, it's that those scenes. A lot of scenes in this one I really enjoyed, Charles. I really like them.
I was gonna say between Hordak and Skeletor, that was a really good battle. Havoc magic versus technology. I thought that was great. Even their dialogue through the battle was really good. Cringer, I don't know if he was Battle Cat at the moment or he was Cringer. It was He-Man touched something and gave a little bit of the power, and Cringer was like, "Wait, you could have done that all the time." That made me laugh. And the line, not that it choked me up, but when Battle Cat was like, "I'll always be your Battle Cat." Like, it doesn't matter what decision you make, whether you're going to be king or you're going to be He-Man. He says, "I'll always be your Battle Cat." I really like that. I don't know. It's Cringer. He was like his protector. He was kind of like, what was it, Nana in Peter Pan that took care of the kids, the dog, but like Cringer, and it was a much better version of Snarf. Snarf used to bother me. Cringer never bothered me. Snarf bothered me.
In the original series, there was an episode of when he gets Cringer, and it's mostly obviously done in flashback, and he's obviously young, I'd say 12, 13, and he finds him in the jungle, and he's a coward, basically, and he doesn't want to, and then Prince Adam doesn't want to keep him, and the sorceress comes along and says, one day he would be a protector, and he lived him, like, it didn't make sense. Then years later, when it becomes He-Man, it comes full circle. So Cringer was well done in this, like a little more depth than I was expecting.
You know what else I also liked? I don't know which storyline you want to say is the A line or the B line. I actually enjoyed both lines. The Teela trying to bring back Preternia. I enjoyed that storyline with that dragon. I was like, ooh, that dragon's really cool. It was like, he's totally going to join the battle. And when he did join the battle at the end, I was like, ooh, that's dope. He came in flying in. I really enjoyed that.
I enjoyed that too.
The kid said what? Funniest moment in the series? You guys have anything that made you laugh? I kind of said some of mine earlier, though, but the lion claw, a couple things.
Yeah, it was between Orko with a couple of his little quips, the Cringer moment where he's like, wait, you could do that? And then, of course, the Evelyn thing.
Yeah, Evelyn was, just great with her. Just like the Spike character, the character that doesn't want to be there is like reluctantly helping them and making all the wisecracks, even though she's helping. Like, fine, whatever. Like the mumbling. I love those characters. My favorite ones to write when I do plays. There's always one in there who just shouldn't be there and gets to say all the things that everyone wants to say. That's kind of a jerk, but you love him anyway. So her lines were just classic, and delivery was perfect as well.
I always loved Orko as the comic relief in general. He was probably my favorite character when I was younger. Like Orko had to be like my number one favorite character. Most people would say, yeah, He-Man was their number one character. I was like, no, Orko.
I liked Orko too. One of the things that I thought was cool was the fact when Teela discovered the snake magic or serpent magic, how she took on that new persona, but she actually looked like the original cartoon, a toy. I don't know if you remember, Jimmy. Did you have Princess Tila, the toy?
Yes, she was a princess, but yes,
Princess Tila.
She wasn't a princess. Tila's not a princess.
Not in the original, she wasn't.
No, she never was a princess. She's
I thought it was Princess Tila.
It's
Tila,
Man-at-Arm's daughter.
I know it's Man-at-Arm's daughter, but I don't know why Princess
She's
Tila
the sorcerer's daughter in Man-at-Arms, but apparently didn't.
So anyway,
go ahead.
I don't know if you remember the original toy. She came with like a cobra kind of hood thing that looked like a serpenta. Like that was her toy.
Yeah,
but in the cartoon, it never happened.
Nope.
Just like Duncan, Man-at-Arms, had a mustache in the cartoon, but his toy didn't. So I kind of thought that was a good callback to the toy being that's what the original Tila toy looked like. It looked like that, not as cool green and stuff, but it still had that whole snake hood, cobra hood thing over her head.
You know what, Charles? That's 10 points for Gryffindor right there.
Yeah.
That's a great. I somehow missed that. You're right. She did have that. I had ask me if I had a toy was just ridiculous anyway. You name it, I had every single. I'm not even joking. I didn't collect anything else. I had I had like one Transformer, maybe a couple GI Joes. I like 2 or 3 when I made a couple. I had every single He-Man figure that existed. Snake Mountain, Castle, Wind Race. I had it all. So yeah, I had that. You had Evil Lynn. You're right. She did have that headpiece there, and it was a nice callback, and I totally missed that. Well done, Charles. I appreciate it. I missed that. Good call. Teacher, class, what's the capital of New York? Student, Martin Luther King. Things that didn't make sense. Mr. B, you got something?
This is minor, okay? And you guys, my background is video games, among other things, but my main thing is video games. So the concept of motherboard. Back in the late 80s, there was a cartoon called Captain N, the Game Master, which was
that was an honorable mention for my conversation of 80s cartoons.
Yes.
Great
so
episode.
In that show, it was a combination of Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. You had Simon Belmont. Then you had Mega Man. Then you had the main character was Captain N. He walked around with a Nintendo controller on a belt and a zapper as a gun that he used to run around shooting people with. And one of their main nemesis that they would battle constantly was Mother Brain from Metroid. And so looking at Motherboard throughout this, 5 episode series, all I could think about was Mother Brain from Metroid. If you'd never played Metroid before, you probably wouldn't make that reference, or you probably wouldn't make that connection, but that was all I could think about. So that was my only, thing that kind of scratched my head going, huh? Okay. I mean, I get, what they were trying to do. I just felt that they could have maybe used some other piece of technology other than motherboard. That's just my thing.
And I thought it was so close to Darkseid's Mother Box. And that's what I was thinking of, because I know DC Comics as well. But that's a good cut with Metroid. That's one of those games everyone has their gap. We talk about gaps in geek culture in terms of like shows. Video games, actually never played Metroid ever. And I know how it's just one of the games that just didn't. And I had Nintendo, I had everything. I just didn't, somehow missed it. But yeah, I get that. I was thinking Mother Box the entire time.
I had a thing that didn't make sense. So the one idea, Miss Richardson, you brought up the fact of He-Man didn't act his age. In the 80s, He-Man and even Prince Adam, they were men. They were not like these teenagers. Yeah. And they kind of changed that a little bit. With this He-Man, he was very young, which was weird because King Randor and his mom were very old.
Yeah.
So it kind of was like, well, their ages didn't necessarily mesh for me. Is that because, like I said, he was so naive in these decisions. And then I was thinking to myself, I don't know if you guys caught this. There was a part when they were talking about you're going to need something about the 4 magics. And so they had the power of Grayskull. They had snake magic. There was the havoc magic. And then she at one point had a vision and said, there's a 4th. And I'm like, oh, that's the Princess of Power. Are they going to bust out She-Ra in this episode? So I wonder, as a prediction, that She-Ra is going to make an appearance in the next season.
I mean, I have that coming up, and your prediction's dead on. But when we get to that one, I actually know deeper about how this goes.
Oh, okay.
But it's well, I won't spoil it, but we'll get to it.
I was thinking of that too. Actually, I was wondering if they were going to include her in some of the subsequent episodes too, because that was equally as popular back in the day, essentially.
Now, I had a third thing that this is very interesting. That if you watched, I don't know if you did, Mr. B, because I know Mr. Richardson did not or didn't watch all of it. But did you watch the Netflix She-Ra animated series that they had out?
No, I haven't watched that.
Okay. So Hordak obviously is the main villain of that, and I recommend anyone to watch that series. I thought it was an outstanding series. I really enjoyed it, beginning to end. Fabulous series. But that was all about technology and the fact that Hordak, they were bending back and forth between the two, kind of mixing in some of the origin stories of Hordak into this version of He-Man. Because, Hordak was originally a She-Ra villain, not a He-Man villain. So they're bringing a lot of stuff from that. Go back and watch that She-Ra. You're going to see a lot of stuff about the motherboard that makes so much more sense.
Okay.
And Hordak.
One of my things that, just bothered me, I don't understand why there was a conflict with He-Man being the most powerful man in the universe and king. Like, those two things can coexist. You could be the king and be the most powerful person. I didn't understand why, well, it's He-Man or Adam. You can't be both. I don't know, because if that's the case, but he's willing to step down and let, democracy rule over, like, it's okay. Like, Hordak, most powerful person in charge. I mean, Thanos, Dr. Doom. There's like a laundry list of heroes or villains, but Superman, leader of the Justice League, most powerful person. It's okay to be the most powerful person and in charge.
You hit the nail right on the head, Mr. Richardson. All those people that want to be the most powerful man and in charge are all villains.
Not Superman, though. I added him at the end.
But he's not the one in charge.
But he's in charge of the whole... Yeah, okay, the Justice League. Oh, Black Adam in charge of his kingdom, but he's not a villain. He's, villain of Jace.
Yeah.
I don't think... But I've never... He's the king. So to be king, you can no longer be He-Man? It just didn't make sense to me. Why do we have to give up all the power? He's been He-Man this long. He's now going to be king.
Would you want He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe, to be your king? What if he wasn't just? Well, He-Man was just. Well, that's the problem.
Right. He was. We've already established that he's a good person. And now, they say, oh, now he has power. But he's literally been the prince there the whole time. He could have been pulling off power. No, he was walking off, hiding, and saving lives all the time. He's sacrificed himself numerous times to now be king with his mom still there and be like, you know what? I'm going to go evil. Skeletor's right. I want all the power. It didn't seem right. So I didn't think it was that much of a conflict, but I understand you needed the manufactured conflict for him to give his uncle the entire kingdom after knowing him for like 6 minutes. I have crazy uncles too. I wouldn't let them be in my house.
It was a Loki moment. If you think about it, they found this adopted blue kid.
It's just, yes. It is a bit much. Mr. G, can I go to the bathroom? Any slow parts in the series? I personally didn't think this series dragged at all. Mr. B, what about you?
No, I concur. It was one of those. I binged watched the entire series. So, and when I do that, I'm not bored. I'm just going until it ends. So I didn't necessarily have any issue with it.
Charles?
Listen, 5 episodes, the longest one being like 26 minutes. There wasn't any time in this series. Mr. McDonald always says, give me more, give me less. I could have used one more episode because I did feel like some of it got rushed for that. But other than that, it was tight.
Okay, who's getting the sticker? It's Star Student Time. Best actor character in the show. I'm going to just say Evelyn again. I already said my reasons why. I like the character. I like how she's not supposed to be there. I always have an affinity and love for the reluctant hero or anti-hero who's dragged it. Love those characters. Mr. B, who do you want?
It's going to be sticker. It's going to be Orko. It's always going to be Orko.
You've been wanting to give Orko the sticker since 1985. You've been waiting.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Nope,
It's
that's
waiting.
5-year-old me is screaming with delight.
Give it to Orko. He's standing there. Mr. G, is Orko getting your sticker too?
No,
Unfortunate for Orko.
they're all getting stickers. No, so
Of course.
I thoroughly like the first one when he became Orko the White, Gandalf the Gray, and then he became Gandalf the White. That was definitely from Revelations and Tila. I really enjoyed Tila's character journey and everything that happened with Tila in the first series, and Evelyn as well. But I really liked the Skeletor parts. I love the parts when he would like glitch out and see himself, and he was just like, "It's me, oh, it's me," and he was like talking to himself. I really enjoyed that internal conflict that Skeletor had and who he was and what he was, and learned all about himself. It kind of gave depth to why Skeletor was trying to take over Eternia, because in the original cartoons, he just wanted the power of Grayskull. There was not a lot of depth to his motivation. And I think that giving depth to the villain really created a better villain for us. So I'm going to give it to Skeletor coming through, being top of the evil pile.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. This may be the first time you've ever given a villain a sticker in the show, Charles.
I'm listening to myself, hating what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly. There's a first time for everything.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed his quote-unquote performance.
Because you felt bad for him. And obviously, Hamill, his voice work is legendary, but you felt bad of what happened to him. The reason he was taken out, because he was the bastard child.
I know I feel bad.
No, he was a bastard child, so he lost his spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it was like Game of Thrones. You're the bastard, you don't get it. And then he was, exiled away, and then this happened, and then he turns into this, and he thought he was going to, it's just kind of, everything broke for him to go evil, and then he couldn't come back for that. It's tough. But Evelyn, for me, Orko and Skeletor standing on the podium too.
Yeah.
Prop or memorabilia from the show, if it was real, and we could go to this universe, multiverse, whatever, what could we steal without getting killed and take back with us? Mr. G, what are you taking?
Oh, wait.
If it was real.
I know that I could not have the Sword of Power. So what I would take, what He-Man could give me, is his loincloth. No, what I would take... You know what? Does that just magically appear when he becomes He-Man? Because Prince Adam doesn't have a loincloth. Just boom,
magic.
There it is.
It's all magic.
It's a magic loincloth. So in Dungeons and Dragons, there are definitely magic loincloths out there and belts of giant strength. I wonder, is the power really all? Maybe it's a belt of loincloth of giant strength, really giving him all that power. But He-Man would definitely be like, "Yo, can I get that battle axe?" He'd be like, "Yeah, no problem." Because that battle axe was dope. That came with the toy also. In the cartoons, He-Man never had the battle axe. But when you got his toy, it came with a sword, a shield, and a battle axe. And when he was like, whatever, I gave my sword to Orko, to tune it, find some tuning, he busted out that shield and had that battle axe. And, he put on that battle armor. And I thought that scene I was like, oh, that's dope.
I like the battle axe a lot. I actually forgot about that. That toy came really, really loaded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mr. B, you had some of these. Those toys were loaded. Weapons. It was so good. Even, Skeletor had his own version of the power sword. It was incredible. What about you, though? What would you steal from the set, Mr. B?
I always, as a kid, I remember watching the commercials for Castle Grayskull like all the time, because it was on like every 10 seconds. And it was one of the things I never had. Was Castle Grayskull.
Oh, you poor child.
I
your
was
child.
A deprived child. Yes, I was.
Sorry.
I had a Castle Grayskull.
Oh.
I had it too, obviously. The trap door, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was just cool. So if I had to grab one thing to get, that would be what I wanted. Was
the entire castle?
Sure.
The real one?
Why not?
Yeah,
I mean,
I couldn't have it as a kid, but I'm taking the real thing.
Sure. I mean, I'm going to upgrade my wish list.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Gotta go big or go home.
Who's gonna come to Who's gonna come to Castle Grayskull to collect taxes? Don't worry about it.
Nobody.
You're not coming in there.
Actually,
in here.
I'm gonna put a moat around it, and there'll be a drawbridge, and then no one can get in, so they can't.
I want Skeletor's staff. I just want it on the wall. Yeah, I want the Havoc staff leaning against the wall in my classroom. That's it. And just walk around with every now and then when I'm annoyed. Just hold the staff. I want it to light up. The eyes to kind of light, but not look like they're lit. It's just perfect. I want the Havoc staff really bad. Teaching this again next year. Listen, let me tell you guys what I know. I'm going to give you some stuff. Maybe not spoilers. They might not do it, but here's what I want to tell you. If you remember the original show of She-Ra, you know they're twins, and you know that Hordak kidnapped her as a twin. Went in the room, took it. So in the flashback of Skeletor or whoever it was going into their kingdom's room in one of those episodes, I paused it to see if they were taking one of the babies because I knew that's what it looked. There was a moment where he looked like he grabbed something out of the bassinet real quick. I had to pause numerous times to find it because that's where he steals. But then in the newer version, he raises her as his own. She was the person in the last scene doing the voice saying, "We're going to fix you, Hordak. We're going to make you better." That turns out in the new version in the like there was a comic series that came out that I read about 10, 11 years ago, like a continuation too. And she was evil. She had grown up and raised by Hordak to be that bad person. And then if that's where they're going, she will show up and not even know she had a twin brother. And he obviously doesn't know he has a twin sister yet. That's why Mom is still alive, because someone's going to have to explain, oh, what do you mean I have a twin? Because she didn't even point it out.
That's funny.
That's the only reason she's still there.
Mom is
Otherwise,
still alive.
Mom's
You're hanging
still
on
alive.
because we need some exposition here.
We're going to need it. So if that's where they're going, and I saw her when she did it, I'm like, oh, I know this because I remember this. She had like a scar, the whole thing. And it turns out to be, again, his twin sister. And I think she ends up becoming good at the end. I don't really know. But that, if they're doing another season, which based on all the metrics, Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 100 score. Kevin Smith was like, I've never gotten 100 in my life. If they do that, that's what I believe they're going. That's where they should go. Do it. Just, I mean, we need to level this up. It's already personal. We destroyed the universe. We built a new one. We made it personal with Skeletor. Let's bring in the twin sister. Let's have fun. Go out. Give them 7 episodes. Carl, you like the idea?
I do. So if I'm going to go back to this Netflix She-Ra thing, it's that storyline where she's evil, she's bad, she's in Hordak's army, but they resolve it full circle. Granted, they're 2 separate projects. If she came in as evil, I would kind of be like, meh. But, you know, Hordak, the Horde still exists. So, you know, maybe she's going to be there, come in as She-Ra to help battle the Horde.
Yeah, I don't think she has the power. I mean, she might. I don't really know. Because you said Evelyn alluded to another power that could be hers. So that could be where she has, that's where She-Ra. Because the way I was thinking, I couldn't understand her coming in and knowing what I know about the original story in the comics. She's not a match for He-Man physically because she was just her sister. And then when she gets good, she gets the power, blah, blah, blah. But then when you mentioned Evelyn's thing earlier, maybe she has access to this 4th power, even though it's part of Grayskull or not. And that's what gives her a level, because we're going to need a He-Man versus She-Ra fight before she becomes a good guy. We need that. And for her to have that level, that 4th, there is another, you know, Princess Leia type line. Maybe that's alluding to her power with that.
Because
together, we put this together.
Yeah, because like in the She-Ra thing, they have Hordak, but then they have something called Hordak Prime. So Hordak is actually not Hordak. He is just a copy of a bajillion different Hordaks. So there is a Hordak Prime, and the Hordak that raised
Adora, I think.
Adora was Hordak, but not Hordak Prime.
Got it.
So
maybe they could spin off that too.
Who knows? They're not connected at all. But you know what? If She-Ra came in bad, I don't know. That would be weird. Like, I'm gonna make you good. Like, I don't know. Make you see the light.
But it's a story though they haven't told. Yeah. And I did read in the comic versions, which I know it turned out really good. She did some damage before she did. So then a lot of it was her them coming to grips with the fact that she's trying to be good after the people she may have put in the ground. There was a lot. I don't think I can do all that.
Yo, Jimmy, going back, I'm sorry. You literally have to watch, and even Mr. B, you have to watch the Netflix She-Ra, because the whole thing in my head I'm thinking of is the She-Ra has a horse and it's a unicorn, you know, like her Cringer.
Yeah.
And it is the funniest comedic banter all the time with this horse. There's always like, yo, that horse can talk. And then the horse is like, I can talk. I can talk. It's absolutely comedy. And the horse is pretty, stellar. The unicorn is pretty stellar
I
in the
may
show.
watch it. I started watching it.
It's
And then
hilarious.
Something
I
happened. I
laughed.
fell off of it, but
Yeah, it's a
it's
great
like
show.
3 seasons, right? It was like
Yeah,
3?
it's a great season. Yeah, it's 3 seasons. It's a great, like I said, a great show.
All right. Can you believe that she asked a question, or he, at the end of the meeting? You've been in meetings before. People ask a question when you're trying to leave. You might get anything else they want to add before we get out of here?
This is not a question, but more of a statement. We've struggled about in the past, like, who's the audience for this show? And it's me. It's us. This, although it was an animated production, it was made for us. And there's no question about it, because sometimes we struggle. We know we talked about Brandon Katz, friend of the show.
Unofficial, official pop culture correspondent. Yes.
Yeah. He commented that he didn't really like Wednesday, and he thought it was very sophomoric. And I said, well, that was the audience. So sometimes we got to step back a little bit to be like, okay, I'm an adult. I'm a 6-year-old adult. Am I the target audience for this particular show? 100%. I am the target audience.
Oh, yeah.
We are the target audience for this series.
Yes,
And it felt that way. It felt it was for me, with the dialogue and the comedy.
You're looking at Gwildor. You're looking at the battle armor suit. You mentioned the axe, which I kind of forgot about until you brought up the Tila thing. Again, something you brought up. Like Orko, his jokes were better this time. Like, you see all these nostalgic moments, me seeing Ram-Man, and you're doing that Leonardo DiCaprio meme where you're pointing at the screen, like, oh, they're doing it. Like, they're doing.
Yeah.
I thought the battle armor toy, which I had, was the dumbest thing in the world. I'm like,
I did too.
Why is he wearing an armor? It's the most powerful man in the universe. It doesn't make sense. And then he pulled it out in this. And then he pulled out the old school outfit from the new He-Man when they rewrote the show back with the cape and the whole thing. I thought the outfit was dumb, but I liked the nod to that. Oh, they're doing that show. I hated that show. I didn't watch it more than one episode, but it's nice that they were like, you know what? We just want you to be more pointing at the screen. So I was here for it. Mr. B, you can go first with your final letter grade.
I'm going to give it an A.
You give a lot of A's here, but I have to agree.
I'm going to give it an A.
Of course.
It's a no-brainer. It really is. It's a no-brainer.
It did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of, He-Man was a protagonist. He-Man was the main character this time. I'm telling you, I got to give it an A as well, Charlie.
I'm giving it A as well. I mentioned it before. Both storylines were captivating, easy to follow. 5 episodes, tight. Animation was awesome. All the throwbacks was great.
Yeah, I got to add, like, the storyline, even the C storyline that came in later, like I said, with Oracle and Man-at-Arms, that was fun. So, yeah, I love shows and movies where if you jump from storyline to storyline, you're not losing it. I found the last season of Stranger Things, I know you guys didn't all watch that, but was like that. They split them into groups, and then they all come together towards the end. And every time you jump, like, oh yeah, that's what have they been up to? Oh, that's right, they're over there. Like, everyone you jump to, there was a character in there you enjoy. They were in a weird situation, and there was banter and fun. Boom, 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 boom. That's perfect. That's what it reminded me of, and I definitely love that part as well. All right, giving our final letter grades. Mr. B, did you have fun?
I had a blast. I had an absolute blast.
Been waiting so long, so patiently to come on the podcast.
I am a patient person. You know that about me. Most of the time.
Thank you for doing this. Sorry, I forgot. But you can come back, and then you can get 2 times, and then you 3.
Yay!
Yeah.
I'll forget. You gotta nag me. Be like, hey, did you watch this? I can come on.
We're 2 floors apart. It kind of makes nagging you a pain in the butt, but eventually I'm going to have to make photocopies somewhere. So,
Yes. You know what?
Right outside Mr. Richardson's door.
Oh, I call it Jimmy's printer. It has its own name now.
We're trying to get a sign on it. We're trying to put something up on the wall. All right, for Mr. B and Mr. G, I am Mr. R. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We will talk to you next time.